So hello everyone, welcome to Positron Academy, and today's topic of discussion is on introduction to nuclear medicine. We'll talk about every possible aspect which we can cover in this presentation. So the contents for this presentation are we'll start with understanding the basic science behind nuclear medicine, followed by the types of nuclear imaging, followed by the power of nuclear medicine, and with due time we will talk about history and the current practice of nuclear medicine and the role of physics in nuclear medicine. Let us discuss the basic science behind nuclear medicine. So a nuclear medicine study involves injecting a compound, and this compound is labeled with a radionuclide and which decays by emitting gamma rays or a positron into the body. And this compound along with this radionuclide is being called as a radiopharmaceutical, or more commonly as a tracer or a radiotracer. So when these radionuclide decays, gamma rays or high energy photons are emitted, and these gamma rays have sufficient energy that it can leave the body in significant number without being scattered or attenuated. And there is an external position sensitive gamma camera. It can detect the gamma rays or the photons and can form the image of the distribution of the radionuclide. So in summary, we can sum out that how a nuclear medicine scan is being done. So it all starts with administration of the radiopharmaceutical, and this pharmaceutical is specific for a given biological process. Fine. So post administration of the radiopharmaceutical, so this pharmaceutical biodistributes in the patient's body and also lead to the emission of the gamma ray photons. Fine. And the last step is detection of those gamma ray photons emitted by the radiopharmaceutical for reconstruction of the medical image, and that image tells about the distribution of the pharmaceutical inside the patient's body, and this image has many prognostic as well as diagnostic information. So now if we want to summarize how this nuclear medicine process is being governed, so it all starts by administration of a pharmaceutical. So that's the pharmaceutical over here, and the pharmaceutical that's being used in the video is FDG, the fluorodeoxyglucose, and that's an glucose analog. So once this glucose is being injected in the patient's bloodstream, so it goes and biodistributes in the patient's body. Fine. And as we know, that's a glucose, and we know our cells are quite dependent on glucose for deriving energy out of it through glycolysis and multiple other metabolic pathways. So we can see that glucose is taken up by our normal organs, like brain has taken glucose at higher concentration, kidneys, bladders have taken glucose. But one thing that we can notice over here, that the patient's lung had a small tumor, and the tumor has also taken up the glucose. Why so? The answer is that tumor are glycolytically more active. They have overexpression of GLUT transporters, and with these overexpressed GLUT transporters they have taken more glucose. So we can now see that tumor has taken more glucose than the surrounding normal tissue, normal cells, and that is being used as a contrast between the uptake of the pharmaceutical by lesion and uptake by the normal cell. There's a huge contrast difference between the two. Fine. So that's the initial scenario in which you can see. But that's our radiopharmaceutical. That's the glucose, and that's the radionuclide, that is F18. And as I have told in my subsequent videos before also, that F18 is an positron emitter. Fine. So what it does, it decays by emitting a positron, and we can see that's our FDG in the bloodstream, and these FDG are taken more by the tumor cells. So that's the F18 FDG over here, and it decays by emitting a positron, and that's the positron over here. And this positron has a definite range in our tissue, and what it does, it keep on annihilating with an electron. So at this position, this positron and the electron has annihilated, has combined, and resulting in the production of two high energy gamma ray photons having energy equals to 511 kilo electron volt. So these are the two high energy gamma ray photons emitted by these positron annihilation process. And these gamma ray photons have been detected by the position sensitive PET cameras and are being used for reconstruction of the medical image, and that's the medical image over here, and that's tell us more about how this radiopharmaceutical has distributed inside the patient's body. So now we can see how a nuclear medicine study goes through. First step is obviously pharmaceutical administration, followed by biodistribution of the pharmaceutical in the body, and also the emission of the gamma ray photons, and finally detection of these gamma rays photon by detectors and reconstruction of the medical image. Fine. So now the next is on the classification of nuclear imaging, and we can broadly classify nuclear imaging into two main subdivisions. It can be either an SPECT imaging or PET imaging. So what is SPECT imaging? What is SPECT? Single photon emission computed tomography. Why we call it single photon? Because the radionuclide that are being used in SPECT decays by emitting a single photon per disintegration. Example, the most commonly used radionuclide in SPECT is 99M technetium metastable state. So it decays to technetium stable by emitting a gamma ray photon. So how many gamma are being released? One gamma. That's why we call it single photon. Now why we call as emission? Emission because the patient's body emits the radiation. That's why we call it emission. And why we call it computed tomography? Because the reconstruction process employed in SPECT is similar of the reconstruction followed in CT scan. That's why we call it computed tomography. And now I guess you are quite familiar why we call it single photon emission computed tomography, because a single photon is being released, emission because patient's body emits radiation, and why CT? Because the process of reconstruction employed in SPECT is taken from the reconstruction from CT scan. That's why computed tomography. And this SPECT imaging can generate both planar image as well as tomographic image. So in planar image, it has a demerit that it cannot provide you depth information, and it provides you little depth information, but whereas for tomographic image, it provides us depth information also. And for the same, data are collected at multiple angles, and cross section of image of the radionuclide distribution is being obtained. And regarding PET imaging, the radionuclide used in PET is decays by means of emitting a positron. And why emission? Because patient's body emits radiation, and tomography because image that are being formed are the slice plus slice image are being generated. That's why we call it tomographic images. And regarding how it goes on, I have explained in the previous video how PET imaging goes through. Next topic of discussion is on the power of nuclear medicine. So what's the advantage of going through a nuclear medicine study? What's the added advantage of the same? So the main power of nuclear medicine lies in its ability to provide sensitive measures of a wide range of biological process in the body, and it can provide information even at the molecular level. So if we compare nuclear medicine study with other studies like MRI based study, X-ray based study, or CT based study, they provide information at the anatomical level but they cannot provide information at the molecular level. And even nuclear medicine studies have very high sensitivity even at the nanomolar range or at picomolar range of the radio level substance concentration. And by means of nuclear medicine, you can study diverse biological process, like you can study tissue perfusion, glucose metabolism, somatostatin receptor expression, and many more things. So you can study events what are going on at the molecular level, fine, not at anatomical scale. So that will tell more about what's going at the cellular level or at the genetic level. It has the ability to tell you even at that scale. So now the next question is, why knowing biological phenomena at the molecular level is important? So the answer is, for example, when a healthy cell gets transformed to a diseased cell, so in a healthy cell there occur some of the molecular changes, and these molecular changes can be at the DNA level, can be at the RNA level, can be at the genetic level, or at the protein level, or at any other levels. And because of these changes at these level, this molecular level, or a single cell level, there occurs changes at the anatomical level also. So these changes occur at later time points, and these changes occurs at earlier time points, maybe even months, years before the disease can be seen. Fine. So by means of molecular imaging, if we can sense out the change at the molecular level, we can diagnose disease at an earlier stage. And that's the advantage of nuclear medicine, that it can detect changes at earlier stage at which anatomical changes has not yet occurred. Fine. So changes at molecular level lead to change in the anatomical level, but at different time scale. That is that these molecular changes occur very early, like changes in DNA level, changes in protein expression. This occurs very early, and because of this accumulation of these changes over time, it lead to a significant anatomical change, and then we got to know that we have a disease. So by means of nuclear medicine, if I can predict that I'm going to have this disease, then treating disease becomes much more easier. And that's the advantage of nuclear medicine, that it can detect those molecular changes at the molecular level and can prevent disease or can treat disease at an earlier stage of time. So these are the series of research work done by people at Stanford School of Medicine, and their main motto was to discover those early changing biomarkers. And if we can detect those early changing biomarkers, then disease treatment, disease reduction becomes much more easier, and also the patient's life also keep on increasing. So by using this group of research, the main effort was to find out the early changing biomarkers. So by using a tumor activable mini circles, they can unravel early cancers in blood. And there are different approaches which are being used for the detection or discovery of the novel blood-based biomarkers for early detection of poor prognosis prostate cancer. And they are also trying to map the glycoproteome to unraveled dysregulation in cancer, and so on and so forth. So these are series of researches done at Stanford School of Medicine with an aim at finding out those early changing biomarkers. So if we can image those early changing biomarkers, or if we can detect those early changing biomarkers, then the disease detection, disease diagnosis, and disease treatment becomes much more easier. So that's an CT image, and that's an PET CT image of the same patient. And what we can see over here, there's a tumor in the patient's right lung. Fine. So that's the only thing that we can observe in this anatomical imaging, that we can see the still lung lesion over here. But we cannot tell, looking at this image, how much receptor are being expressed on the tumor surface, or what about the metabolic rate of this particular lesion. So but by means of F18 FDG PET CT scan, we can now tell the volume of tumor that is glycolytically active. So now by means of nuclear medicine, we are revealing information at the molecular scale also, because this volume of this tumor is glycolytically more active. So what it means, they have higher expression of the GLUT transporters. So by means of nuclear medicine, we are revealing something more than this anatomical imaging. We're now telling you about the glycolytic rate, about receptor expression, and many more things. And that's the advantage of nuclear medicine, that it can tell you more about what's going on in the molecular level. And that's about some of the normal brain scans. We can see in a normal brain there is higher the density of the dopaminergic receptors, but as the brain becomes pathological in nature, like that's the brain of an obese person, so we can see reduced dopaminergic neurons over here, and that's the changes of these brain scans at different conditions. Like that's the brain scan of an alcoholic person, that's the brain scan of an cocaine user. So there are significant changes in the brain receptor expression at different conditions. So by means of these nuclear medicine scans, we can tell more about the we can tell more about what's going on in the brain at the molecular level, and accordingly we can treat the same. And that's the healthy heart, which is well metabolized, and that's the diseased heart, and we can see that it's a decreased heart metabolism in a cardiac patient. And that's the PET CT scan. We can see the lungs over here, the heart over here, and that's the corresponding FAT PET scan. We can see entire heart is well metabolized, but there is a photopenia over here, and this photopenia is basically because of ischemia. And by looking at this image, you cannot say that whether these ischemic area will go through angiogenesis or not, but by means of molecular medicine you can now tell whether this given area of the heart is going through angiogenesis or not. So by means of copper 64 DOTA VEGF, we can now say that this region is going through angiogenesis post ischemia. So that's the advantage of nuclear medicine, that it reveals information at the molecular level. So we cannot dream of the fact that we can get information regarding metabolism, angiogenesis from this image, but from nuclear medicine scans we can tell about either whether angiogenesis is happening over here, whether metabolism is well perfused or not. So we can tell about many information which our normal anatomical image fails to provide us. So that's all for today. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel, and the remaining part will be uploaded in part B. Thank you for watching.